Boxy, we're live. Hi, I'm Larry Harnish, and this is Boxy with the Ask Me Anything on the Black Dahlia case for August 2025. In case you're new, I started doing the Ask Me Anything on the Black Dahlia case because I got fed up with the poor quality of the true crime shows and podcasts and books. And first thing, I have a new microphone. Voila, here is the Tempest 512 microphone. Okay, it's supposed to be a good microphone. Now I will tell you, if the microphone cuts out, put it in the chat. Okay, or if the volume control is too low, put it in the chat. This is supposed to be a good microphone. Got good reviews. And if you were around for the last George Hodel session, you will know that I was using the microphone in the webcam, and the audio quality was terrible. And I will say, this is supposed to be, it's a Tempest 512. It's supposed to be a good microphone. The old microphone did not leave willingly. It's built into the webcam, and boy, it didn't want to leave. It's a USB mic. I should be able to just plug it in and everything is fine. No, that didn't happen. The new microphone and the old microphone fought like that. And the other thing that the new microphone did, because it's very sophisticated, there's a headphone jack. Okay. And so I could play, it wanted to play the audio back through the headphone jack in the microphone rather than the speakers. So I had to fiddle a lot more than I anticipated fiddling around with it. But nonetheless, I have a new microphone. And ideally, the bad audio that I was having with the webcam mic will go away forever. Number one. Number two, technical difficulty. I realized that the chat last time, I couldn't see it. People were leaving stuff in the chat, and I couldn't see it. So I have gone back. Somebody sent me a pop out of the chat. So I have those questions. I will be addressing them this time. Again, this is supposed to be a good microphone. It's supposed to cancel out the background noise. It's August in Los Angeles. I have fans going. And so if it sounds like an airplane hangar, I apologize for that. This microphone is supposed to, filter out that stuff. Okay. That's all the technical stuff. Again, I started doing the Ask Me Anythings a while back because I got fed up with the nature of the true crime TV shows and podcasts. And indeed, nothing has changed. In fact, it's gotten worse. So who is this Larry Harnish guy? Who is he? 34 years in journalism, 27 years at the Los Angeles Times. I began researching the Black Dahlia case in 1996, which turned out to be very fortunate for me because the material is so polluted now with bogus theories and nonsense that I'm really lucky that I did my research a long time ago. And I'm going to talk more about that. I want to get caught up on a few things, and I want to talk about William Mann's forthcoming book on the Black Dahlia. But I won't do that. Bear with me. I'm going to get to some other stuff first. But his book is called Murders, Monsters, and Madness in Mid-Century Hollywood. Okay. Anyway, ground rules. This is just Black Dahlia questions. No George Hodel questions. No Steve Hodel questions. Questions. Ask me anything, not tell me anything. Don't do, this is more of an observation. No. Don't do that. Questions, please. Okay. I usually get a troll. I report them. I don't put up with any nonsense. So that are kind of the ground rules. The next Dalia session will be the first Tuesday of September already, September 2nd. I do have another George Hodel, Steve Hodel session coming up August 19th, third Tuesday of the month. So I'll be doing save your George Hodel, Steve Hodel questions for then. Okay. First of all, report on the book. I am at 178,000 words. At this point, I am in an analysis of Elizabeth Short's autopsy and the crime scene. And I'm going through some books that I haven't read in a long time. I've read them, but not in a long time, like Severed. And one of the ones I looked at, and I was kind of tracing the influence of John Gilmore in Severed to the later books on the Black Dahlia case. One of them being, where are you? There you are. Cases That Haunt Us. Okay, this is an advanced review copy of Cases That Haunt Us. And, you know, they get a lot. John Douglas and Mark Olshaker get a lot from Severed. And one of the strange things they say in there, and it's not anywhere else, is they speculate that Elizabeth Short's body was frozen. What? No. All the original investigators said Elizabeth Short appeared to be freshly killed within the last 10 to 12 hours before she was found. Where they get the body was refrigerated, I don't know. But anyway, I'm going through an analysis of the autopsy and the crime scene, and it's tough going to organize everything and make it logical and readable. It's a challenge. So that's what I'm doing now. That's what I'm working on. Some people noticed that, July 29th was July 29th was Elizabeth Short's birthday. A year ago, I posted selections from the book. I think it turned out to be about 7,000 words. I posted online. One day only. Gone. Took it down. Never posted again. So any, observations this year were very quiet. I certainly had her in my thoughts, but I decided not to do another, post an excerpt of the book. I decided that I was going to just observe her birthday quietly. But she did have a birthday, July 29th. Another thing I want to mention is internet influencers. There was a paranormal influencer, and I must be late to the game on the paranormal influencers, because there was a guy named Dallin Spratt, something like that. And he went to Elizabeth Short's grave, and he sat down next to her headstone, and he was filming him. He was, streaming himself, and he had a notebook computer that he opened up, and he had a program called Spirit Box, which I had never heard of before because I don't really do paranormal stuff. And so he goes to her grave, fires up the notebook computer, launches Spirit Box. And if you're not familiar with Spirit Box, it sounds like that. And so he does this, in my opinion, publicity stunt. Miss Elizabeth, are you there? Okay. Miss Elizabeth, who hurt you? Was that Mark? Did Mark hurt you? Was there anyone else? Did George hurt you? Honestly, it's so tacky, so cheesy, honestly. But this guy has thousands of subscribers, thousands of page views, hundreds of likes. Telling the truth really is a very, in comparison, is a very limited exposure. There was another woman online who did she did an online tarot card reading of Elizabeth Short, thousands of likes, thousands of views. I guess that's what pulls people in. Anyway, that's my little rant on paranormal and going to taking a spirit box to Elizabeth Short's grave. The only paranormal thing I found in that video was he was sitting next to her grave, and he was sitting on an anthill, and so he had to get up because the ants were attacking him, which I found absolutely. He's like, okay, there's the mojo of Elizabeth Short, sitting on the anthill. That was pretty funny. Otherwise, just incredibly tacky. Okay, that ends my rant on that. Doing publicity stunts at Elizabeth Short's grave is just, please. Okay. Now, I'm going to talk about William Mann's forthcoming book. It won't be published until January, okay? He's got a lot of lead time on it. It's called Murders, Monsters, and Madness in Mid-Century Hollywood. I got a copy of it. I got an advanced copy of it. I'm reading it. I've read it. I need to go back and review some sections of it before I discuss it. But it doesn't come out until January, but I can already see people building word of mouth around it. If you know who Megan Abbott is, she's been on social media pushing the book, saying, yeah, it's the best book. I've read all the books about the Black Dahlia case. This is the best one, which the best book about the Black Dahlia case, considering, your competition is this, that's not hard to make. But the short answer is the book is a mess. And I should preface everything I'm going to say by, adding that William Mann wrote to me in 2023, and he asked to interview me. He said, okay, I have the district attorney's files here. I have what the LAPD has released. Okay, I've got the FBI file. I mean, all the generally available stuff. And then he augmented it with some other stuff. And he said, I'm not going to try to solve the Black Dahlia case. Okay, that all sounds good. Can I interview you? And I said, no. And why not? Because I don't give interviews anymore. And I couldn't see any reason to give an interview to another author. What's in it for me? Nothing. And now that I've seen the book, I'm really glad I didn't talk to him. He refers to me in the book. I am a researcher. I'm in the end notes, and I will also point out that who else didn't talk to him? Well, the LAPD didn't talk to him. Mitzi Roberts was custodian of the Black Dahlia case at the time he was writing the book. She didn't talk to him, and Elizabeth Short's family did not talk to him. So he talked to other people who I'm not sure what they knew. What I'm not sure how accurate. I'm not sure the accuracy of what they told him. He did talk to some relatives, but at this point, all the original participants are gone, and so you're kind of reliant on what their children and grandchildren heard, which may be kind of iffy. So the bottom line is, and what I'm going to talk about this time is his solution, his guy. Okay. I'm going to ignore all the other stuff. I want to talk about his guy. I'm not going to name the guy because he is someone who passed through Elizabeth Short's life, like so many men, very briefly. And when I describe him, you'll know who I'm talking about. But the book is very peculiar in that Mann starts out saying, my goal is not to solve the murder of Elizabeth Short. Okay. I want to write about the era. I want to write about her. He'll say she was Tom Sawyer in ankle strap shoes. Okay. Fine. He's going to try to do a portrait of Elizabeth Short. Good luck with that. But that's next time. And then most of the way through he dismisses the usual suspects very quickly. George Hodel, 2 pages. Nah, he didn't do it. He talks about Carl Balsiger. I don't recall now if he talked about Patrick O'Reilly or Sergeant Chuck or any, the usual suspects. But again, and Mark Hansen. But then I'd say maybe 3/4 of the way through the book, he suddenly has a suspect. Okay. And it's a guy who did pass through Elizabeth Short. He knew Elizabeth Short. She and Margie Graham stayed with this guy and his roommate very briefly in Hollywood. That did happen. The guy was a traumatized World War II veteran. That is true. He went into the service hoping to get medical training. That's true. He didn't get it and was bitter about that. And he was bitter about, war in general, which is understandable. But then Mann says, well, he was going to USC because he wanted to be a chiropractor. And it's like, what? No, you don't go to USC to become a chiropractor. No, USC has a medical school, very well known, and a dental school. It does not operate a school of chiropractic. No, that doesn't happen. And he speculates on this, this guy who I'm not naming, either having already killed Elizabeth Short or taking her to, after he killed her, taking her to the cadaver lab at USC and bisecting her and all this other stuff, and then transporting her to the crime scene. And it's like, boy, howdy, what? And you have to remember, if you read Boxy real carefully, you'll know that these two guys didn't have cars. They both, in their statements, these two roommates that I'm not naming, said, we didn't have cars. So, it's like, what? Anyway, it's all very speculative about this guy. Again, somehow getting into the USC, the cadaver lab at USC Medical School and cutting up Elizabeth Short and going to the crime scene and somehow getting away with it. And then, so first of all, Mann starts by saying, I'm not going to try to solve the case. Then he speculates this elaborate scenario with the guy I'm not naming. And then he says, or not, maybe not, maybe it wasn't him. And it's like, if you're going to go with a solution, some feedback, looping and static from the mic. Yeah, let me turn down does that help? Maybe. So, it's like, if you're going to say, this is my solution, then stick with it. Make it your solution. Stand by have the courage of your convictions. And I will leave it at that, because I want to leave time for questions. The bottom line is, his solution is way off. There's just no way. And then, would I recommend anybody buy it? No. I mean, it's anybody who buys this book, if you read this book, you're just going to be more confused. And later on, and I'll talk about this more probably next time, he gets derailed into all the stuff at the Astor Motel. And that's really inside baseball stuff of the Black Dahlia case. But there's a lot of stuff in Boxy about and it's like, no. And he gets into all these sort of tangential characters. But I want to leave time for questions, so I'm going to leave it at that. Bottom line is, his solution is implausible, to say the least. His scenario is implausible. And then he backs away after saying he's not going to solve it. Then he backs away from it. So, okay, that's enough. Let's open it up for questions. Let me scroll back here. I think there was, why do DNA advancements seem to have little application in this case? That is the DNA question. What are you going to test? Okay. What do you have that is from the killer? Okay. Almost nothing. And why is that? Well, the killer washed the body and scrubbed the body. We know that. There isn't anything of her. No, they didn't find any of her clothing, purse, any kind of personal belongings. The only thing they had of hers was this little envelope, that was addressed with cutout letters from the newspaper, of her business. There were some business cards and snapshots and pieces of paper and that kind of thing. And then her so-called address book, birth certificate, and everything had been washed or dunked or wiped or something with solvent. It's kind of unclear from the news reports what it was. Was it kerosene? Was it gasoline? But they could smell the content. So presumably that would wipe out any, whoever killed her had enough on the ball to know to do that. So what would be left would be what? Harry Hansen said when they ran the fingerprints on the envelopes. And you have to remember, a lot of people handled the envelopes because it went through the postal system. Okay. So the killer presumably handled the envelope, but so did all the mail sorters and the cops and everybody else. And they did some fingerprint. They did dust for fingerprints, which was what they would do at the time. And Harry Hansen said they found smudges and blurs. Now, presumably, because it was cut out with addressed with cutout letters, maybe some of the back of the newspaper clippings that were cut out, maybe they had larger prints, possibly. But the only thing you could really do with DNA, I would think at this point, is if he licked the envelope, assuming that he did and didn't just use water, or the stamp. If the killer, licked the stamp. But remember, what was common on offices of that time is they had a little glass dish. This is in the ancient era now, where stamps weren't pre-stick, weren't peel and stick. You had to lick them and stick them on the envelope. But was very common in offices at that time. There'd be a little glass dish with a sponge and a little bit of water. And people would, if you wanted to do a stamp so you didn't have to lick them all, you would do that. So there's no guarantee that the killer actually, licked the stamp or licked the envelope, maybe. But the more relevant question is, why doesn't the LAPD pursue that? And it's like, okay, what is the LAPD all about? The LAPD is about an arrest that is going to lead to a conviction. Is anyone ever going to be arrested in the Black Dahlia case? No. Is anybody ever going to be prosecuted and convicted in the Black Dahlia case? No. So for the LAPD, they have absolutely no motivation to devote personnel and time to a case that isn't going to result in an arrest and conviction. There's no need to do that. And so even if DNA got more, assuming that DNA is sophisticated enough that you could test the envelope, the stamp, and assuming that they still had the envelope and the stamp, which maybe they do, maybe they don't, maybe. The result would be a lot of scientific tests, and then there's never going to be arrest or conviction. It's just sort of satisfying everybody's curiosity. So that's, even if it were possible, I don't see that happening. Okay, last time, what do I think of the TV movie Who is the Black Dahlia with Lucy Arnaz? I saw it. It's on YouTube. I did not see it when it came out. I did talk to the guy who wrote it, Robert Lenski. He had, because people were alive at that time, he had to change a lot of details. Phoebe would not sign a release, so he had to change her character. Red Manley would not sign a release, so he had to change the Red Manley character. So a lot of things were altered. So it's fictitious. It's okay. Lenski was very proud of it. He was, I don't know if it was like the first thing he had sold to television or not. But Who is the Black Dahlia was a TV movie done in the 70s with Lucy Arnaz. It is on YouTube in a funky print. You can find it. And that's about it. I have watched it all. I haven't watched it in a long time because I don't see any reason to. But yeah, it's out there. Okay. Over here. Scroll back through. Okay, the DNA. Let's see. The envelope the killer mailed with the items, letter to follow. What is the possibility that one of the following letters were legit? None of them. Nah, no. He had the killer sent the one letter with her stuff, and that's it. And I think the original the problem was that there were a lot of pranksters, and you have to remember that in this era, in the 1940s, pranking the police was something to do. All the Black Dahlia Avenger, all that mail, all the postcards, and there's a ton of prank mail. That they were all pranks. None of them were legit. I don't think they believed that any of the letters, except for the original one, was actually from the killer. I don't think so. So let's see. Okay. P.U. Eatwell claims that Mark Hansen was the most corrupt businessman in L.A. Is this true at all? Well, most corrupt businessman in L.A. covers a lot of territory. And I'm not sure of that. If you saw how Mark Hansen lived, he had a little dinky bungalow a block off Hollywood Boulevard. And he could walk. The advantage of it is that he could walk from his little bungalow house on Carlos, which is now gone, to the Marcal, which is the theater that he had on Hollywood Boulevard, and also to the Florentine Gardens. But he did not live opulently at all. And I think was pretty tight with a buck, is my impression. In terms of being really corrupt, nah, I don't see that. There is the folklore that he was involved with the mob. That's mainly based off of a book by Nils C. Granlund, where in that book, I think it's called Blondes, Brunettes, and Bullets, something like that. That book is mostly about Nils C. Granlund, NTG's experiences in New York. What he talks about in regarding the Florentine Gardens is that they put on cheap shows, and with cheap shows you get cheap customers. So he upgraded the shows that were put on at the Florentine Gardens. The Florentine Gardens was huge. It accommodated a couple thousand people. It was big, and they showed a lot of flesh, female flesh. And Elizabeth Short's shtick was that she was from a fine Boston family who was shocked and horrified by the way they carried on out here in Los Angeles. So it's doubtful that she ever set foot in the Florentine Gardens. So was he the most corrupt business? Nah. He was just a minor figure trying to get along, he's been blown way out of proportion. Okay, let's go back over here. Oh, okay, Javier. Yeah, I got that one. All right. Did they eliminate Daniel Voorhees right away? I forget. Daniel Voorhees is one of these sad sack losers who confessed to killing the Black Dahlia. And he was, the subject du jour, the suspect du jour. He had his photograph taken and that kind of thing. But, there are so many of these, confessing Sams, these false confessors, that it's really just a sideshow. If I remember correctly, I think he was the one who had the brother that, said, yeah, Voorhees, Daniel is kind of messed up mentally. But yeah, he was eliminated, I think within a day or two, something like that. Okay. Let's see. Oh, I got this question from last time and this time. Okay. What role did Ray Pinker play in the investigation? You said his widow said Ray always said it was a clean professional job. That would be the bisection of Elizabeth Short. Whoever did it knew exactly what he was doing. Yes, that's true. Ray Pinker was the head of the crime lab, the LAPD crime lab. There were two guys, Ray Pinker and Lee Jones. Ray Pinker never wrote a book about forensic investigation or anything like that. He started very early with the LAPD, and then Lee Jones came along. Lee Jones wrote a book about forensic investigation, and it deals with firearms and fingerprints, ballistics, all that kind of stuff. And so, Pinker had a lot of exposure. I think he started in the 30s. I forget. I went up to his house, and his widow, Ruby, very nice lady, let me sit at his desk and go through what was left. So his role would be, he was at the crime scene. If you look at the pictures, you will see him at the Elizabeth Short crime scene. Lee Jones is also there. They are both there. If you look very carefully in the photographs, Ray Pinker is kind of balding, and he's got his jacket pulled back, and he's got his hands in his pocket, which is what you do at a crime scene if you're, hands in your pockets. And Lee Jones is also there. And so that's Ray Pinker. He analyzed her blood type during the autopsy. Again, Elizabeth Short had been bled out. She had been exsanguinated. And so I think it was Pinker who ran the test to determine what her blood type was. They recovered some fibers from her body that Pinker analyzed. Those were eventually sent to the FBI crime lab. If I say Ray Pinker, is that a problem? Anyway, so Ray did that. He, again, I think, and I'm relying on my memory here, there was a tire track in the gutter near the crime scene. And I think there's a photograph of that, and I think he analyzed that. And I think that's about it. But he did, one thing he did was, as soon as Elizabeth Short was found murdered, all of a sudden, all these clothes, there were abandoned clothes that were found, and he had to analyze those. Good example is they found clothing, I think it was a suitcase, ultimately determined belonged to a woman named Clora Bryant, who was a black jazz trumpet player. And he got that clothing and, looked at all the laundry marks of that clothing and determined, had to find out what dry cleaner was it from, who did it belong to, that kind of thing. And so Pinker, did a lot of that kind of stuff, analyzing things that had been found that might have been related to the crime. So he stayed busy. Okay. Let's see here. Severed, what was the most popular Dahlia book? Jack Webb, The Badge, or some pulp magazine? That's hard to say. I think Severed is the most influential. Also, The Badge. The Badge is Jack Webb's book about the LAPD, written in, published in 1958. And people assume that because it's from Jack Webb, he had some kind of special knowledge of what happened in the LAPD. Jack Webb was really the first person to paint a downbeat portrait of Elizabeth Short. Yeah, I would say Severed because it's the most accessible. It's not good, it's very influential. Severed is 25% mistakes and 50% fiction, but it is influential. Okay. I was wondering if anybody remembered Elizabeth Short buying her cosmetics or perfume from them. Most of her photos show her wearing a full face of makeup. Yes, that is true. I have never read anything about her purchasing makeup. There are comments from some of her roommates that she wore a lot of makeup. But in terms of where she bought it, I've never seen any comment. I've never seen any comment along those lines of her buying it. No, I don't know. There are, I think I've never heard Joan Renner do a presentation on Elizabeth Short's makeup. I'm pretty sure Joan does one. I've never heard it. But I don't have a lot to say about her makeup other than the fragrance that she wore. I do know that. Let's see. Was putting wax in a tooth cavity a thing back then, or was it just Elizabeth? I've never heard of anybody else doing it. That is Absolutely. I never have encountered that. It's not a good idea. Um, because if you plug up those cavities with wax, that accelerates the decay. So it was not a good idea to do that. Um, but the investigators found, these candles in her luggage, and they were trying to figure out what were they for, until her roommate said, "Oh yeah, she used to plug her teeth with wax." And it's an interesting experiment. I actually took a candle, since you want to know. People want to know, why is the book taking so long? So, yeah, one of the things I did was I got a candle, I melted it, and it's like, how difficult would that be to plug your teeth with that? And candle wax is, first of all, it gets very, if you pull it out in a little bitty, it's very sooty. Number one, there's a lot of soot in it, and it hardens really fast. So I'm not sure exactly how she did it, because if you're sticking your fingers in melted wax, that's hot. No, I don't know. I mean, but I did run some experiments with how do you do that. Um, it's tricky. The best I could come up with is, if you took like a little piece of tinfoil, like a gum wrapper, and molded it, maybe you could do it that way. I don't know. Let's see. Did potentially important evidence disappear or get lost, eliminating possibility of testing for the killer? There is no evidence. People talk about, oh, well, all the evidence is missing. There isn't any. The only evidence at all. Elizabeth Short was found naked in an open field, okay? No clothing, no purse, no shoes, no jewelry, nothing, just her. Okay? The only thing they ever found of hers was this envelope of stuff that was mailed to the newspapers. That's it. That's all the evidence there is. You don't have, tons of evidence in the Black Dahlia. You don't have anything. They recovered her suitcases. Are those evidence? No. All that stuff was returned to her family. There just isn't anything. The only thing that they would have was, again, this envelope of stuff. I assume at least some of it was in the filing cabinet at Robbery Homicide, except for the pieces that were sent to the crime lab for testing, or possibly to the FBI for advanced testing, maybe, because the FBI had a more sophisticated crime lab. But there really isn't a lot. Okay. How did Miss Short meet Mark Hansen? Okay. Elizabeth Short met, and Margie Graham, her roommate for a while, met a guy named Sid Zaid, okay, who was a band leader. And Sid Zaid knew Mark Hansen. And Sid Zaid somehow took in Margie Graham and Elizabeth Short. And I've been to his place. It's a little dinky duplex. There's no room at all in it. His wife had just had a baby. And so he said, "Hey, Mark, maybe you'd like to put up these two young women." And so that's how they met Mark Hansen. It was through a guy named Sid Zaid. What about Ann Toth saying that she believed Mark Hansen had something to do with Elizabeth Short's murder? Okay. What Ann Toth said to Mark Sjostrom. If you know Mark Sjostrom is an early Black Dahlia investigator. He's been at it a long time. He has a True Crime Garage or something like that. But years and years ago, he shared the contents of his interview with Ann Toth. And her comment to Sjostrom was that he was kind of a disreputable guy, but he was, quote, too chicken shit to actually kill anybody. So she might have thought, Mark Hansen was involved in it somehow, but her line was, he was way too chicken shit to actually kill anybody. So that's that. Okay. What year did the new tract of houses begin at the spot where the Black Dahlia? That was the 1950s. It was vacant for a long time and really didn't begin to fill in until the 1950s. It's a predominantly Asian American neighborhood, which is why those houses have kind of bonsai landscaping and that sort of thing. The city has finally put in street trees decades later, but for the longest time there was nothing. It looked like a new housing development because there were no mature trees. Unlike the adjoining block, which I think is Grayburn, that's fully landscape. That's got mature trees, but Norton Avenue does not. Okay. What's the chance the killer could have been a battlefield medic in the Army? Okay, they interviewed a guy who did first aid. And he said, what I did was splinters and stuff like that, nothing as elaborate or difficult as, cutting a body in half. That takes a particular kind of expertise that you wouldn't get doing, emergency medicine. You don't get that you wouldn't get that kind of training. So no. Let's see. What do we got here? Did detectives do neighborhood canvases back in January 1947? Would they have done one in Leimert Park? Oh yeah. They went door to door again and again, all through that neighborhood for blocks, even over on the other side of Crenshaw Boulevard. And one of the things the police museum had on display in the there was an exhibit in, I think it was 2012. James Elroy presents Elizabeth Short, and it was kind of this selection of Black Dahlia material from the LAPD archives. And one of the things that was on display was just sheets and sheets of addresses that police door knocked. Yeah, there were huge sweeps of not just Leimert Park, but I mean, just square miles of that area, and also downtown. The investigators did huge sweeps from Main Street over to the Biltmore, lots of door knocking. And in order to do that, they borrowed officers from the sheriff's department and the CHP. They were all involved in these major sweeps. So yeah, they definitely did huge door-to-door canvases in Leimert Park and downtown LA, for absolutely sure. It's interesting to note they missed a surgeon from the very neighborhood where the body was found. Yeah, they weren't looking for that, Okay. Are you familiar with the book Corroborating Evidence by William Rasmussen? Where does it rate in the Black Dahlia books hierarchy? Oh, yeah. William Rasmussen kind of blenderized a lot of Black Dahlia books, and he sort of mixed them all together. He's got this thing called Corroborating Evidence. He has written me. He's offered to send me this book. I have a copy. I think he's up to like the 5th edition of this book. I have an earlier edition, and honestly, it makes my head hurt. There's so many mistakes in it. It just makes my head hurt. It's a source for Wikipedia, which tells you something about Wikipedia. Awful book. Absolutely terrible, awful book. So Rasmussen actually offered twice to send me a copy of his book free. And I said, I have it. Thank you. And then he offered again. Would you want a copy of my book? No, I have it. I have a copy. I don't need another one. Thank you very much. Let's see. Have you ever uploaded a video debunking the barrage of lies in the Black Dahlia Confidential episode that 48 Hours put out years back? The amount of lives in that, I have not. The reaction videos take a long time to do because I have to sit here and watch them and kind of react to them. And it's generally a 2-to-1 ratio. If it's an hour program, my reaction, because I stop and comment on, it's about double that. So an hour show would be 2 hours, and it's very time consuming. Nobody watches those long videos. YouTube is all focused on, a minute because they want to compete with TikTok. So anything, even approaching an hour is like no go. So yeah, I've never done that. At this point, it doesn't seem, I do it kind of piecemeal. I think 48 hour, I think that's the one where people, they think they have found footage of VJ Day celebration on Hollywood Boulevard, and they think it's Elizabeth Short, and it's like, no, she wasn't in LA. No, she wasn't here. But people, want that to be film of Elizabeth Short, but it's not. Okay. Let's see. Answered that question. Okay. Since the nickname Black Dahlia was used when Betty was still alive, do you know if she enjoyed the nickname or was less than amused? No idea. No idea. The most we know is that it was used. The Black Dahlia nickname originated in this drugstore lunch counter in Long Beach. She had come out to Los Angeles from Medford in the summer of 1946 and was staying at an apartment / hotel for a week or so, and used to go up to this drugstore lunch counter and hang out. Despite what people think about Elizabeth Short, the Black Dahlia hanging out in bars, nah. She was smart in that respect. Her favorite venue would be the drugstore lunch counter or the soda fountain, something like that, that's innocuous, where a lone woman, a woman by herself, could be in a drugstore lunch counter, and there would be a high turnover of guys, okay, that she could strike up conversations with, but there wouldn't be the atmosphere of a bar or a cocktail lounge, where a woman sitting alone at a bar sends a very different message than a woman sitting alone at a lunch counter. And so one of her favorite hangouts was a lunch counter. So that's where she got this nickname, was in this drugstore lunch counter in Long Beach. How she felt about it, there's no way to know that. Absolutely no way to know that. Let's see. Did Antoth have an opinion of who might have killed Elizabeth Short? I'm trying to remember. Frank Jimison, who was the district attorney's investigator who did most of Boxey, talked to her boyfriend, Leo Himes, and I forget who she mentioned. And rather than trust my memory and get it wrong, I think she might have suggested somebody to them at that point, but I don't want to get it wrong, so I'll just skip that question. Okay. Have you thought about Walter Bailey in connection with the solvent used on the envelope in World War I? Benzene was apparently used to clean surgical tools. Well, rubbing alcohol or whatever is prevalent in doctors' offices, So yeah, it's whatever was the killer used whatever was convenient that was a solvent. Was it kerosene? Was it gasoline? Was it rubbing alcohol? It was something that had an odor, for sure. What we have at this point, we have absolutely no idea what it was, but we know he used something. Did Ruby tell you Ray was convinced the killer had to be a surgeon? I don't remember. I mean, that was, I probably did that 20 years ago. And I took notes on it at the time. What I remember her saying that, Ray said it was a clean professional job, because that's what he said. Whether it was specifically a surgeon. Now, Frederick Newbar, the autopsy surgeon, in discussions with Harry Hansen, said that is a fine piece of surgery. So we have that from Newbar. And I would tend to believe him. He's going to be, because that's the horse's mouth. He's the guy who did the autopsy. He's the one who told Harry Hansen it's a fine bit of surgery. So that, to me, that, yeah. And, Ray Pinker was at the autopsy. He observed it. But definitely Newbar said that's a fine piece of surgery. And it wasn't a 15-minute or 30-minute or an hour. It took a long time to bisect her. Okay. Can you describe what Elizabeth's experience would have been riding the bus across the country? It seems to me it must have been pretty miserable, especially in the summer. That's a good question. I spent a lot of time on that. And Elizabeth Short broke her bus trip up in segments. Okay. She took the bus from Medford to Indianapolis. Why did she stop in Indianapolis? Nobody knows. It's not really clear that she knew anybody in Indianapolis. My theory is that that's all the money she had. She had enough money for a ticket to go to Indianapolis, and that's where she went. And then somehow got more money to go to Chicago, because she went to Chicago. And I'm not sure she actually knew anybody in Chicago. She met people in Chicago for sure, but whether she actually had connections in Chicago that she was going to meet, I don't think so. And so the bus trip was Medford to Indianapolis. Stayed in Indianapolis a while, long enough to get her pictures taken with this guy, which is another story. Takes the bus to Chicago. Again, stops there. Why? We don't know. It's not clear that she knew anybody in Chicago. And then Chicago to Los Angeles. And in those days, I think the bus trip, I'm trying to remember, I think the bus trip was like 2.5 days. And I don't remember, I researched all of this. The first day they went so far, the second day, I think Salt Lake City, maybe the second day. And then like the third day, they would finally get into Los Angeles. So it was about 2.5 days. It was about a 2.5 day bus ride. We don't know. I think the buses were air conditioned at that point. I think Greyhound had air conditioned buses. At least, if you want to see what they look like, the buses of that era look like, look at the opening of Ride the Pink Horse. And it's the film noir with Robert Montgomery, I think. And the opening scenes of Ride the Pink Horse have exactly that kind of bus. And I'm pretty sure it was air conditioned at that point. The buses were air conditioned. So, I mean, at least she had that. But it was a long bus ride. Okay. Celebration of VJ does show a lot. Okay. The VJ celebration in LA clip does show a young woman who looks very much like Elizabeth Short. Has it definitely been dispelled that it was she? Yeah, she was in Medford. So regardless of how much people want that clip to be Elizabeth Short, it's not her. She was in Medford. Done. Okay. It ain't her. Forget it. Let go. Is Betty Bersinger still alive? I'm not sure. I read something somewhere where she no longer discusses the Black Dahlia case. I'm lucky I interviewed her in 1996 and her husband. It was a very nice fellow. Oh yeah. Buses were a heck of a lot cheaper. Trains were, why didn't she take she didn't have the money, I mean, let's be real. Train travel was expensive. Buses were a lot cheaper. That's why. Elizabeth Short really lived hand to mouth financially. You've got to remember that. Was Elizabeth Short a compulsive liar? I always wondered why she fictionalized her life so much. She definitely did fictionalize her life for sure, which is very problematic. She lied about certain things for sure. She made up a lot of stories about herself. I think it was I think a lot of her stories were to gain sympathy, so people would give her money. Is I think why she did it. She had a repertoire of sympathy stories, so people would feel sorry for her and give her money. So there was an end to it. But she did a lot of that. Many stories. It made the investigation of her murder quite difficult. All of her fictional stories. Were Kirk Douglas, Francho Tone, and Arthur Lake ever seriously considered suspects? Only here. Only in this book. Otherwise, no. It's just total John Gilmore bullshit. As I said, Severed is 25% mistakes and 50% fiction. It's just full of nonsense. Have I had a tough time with on a timeline of her life since she seemed to always have made up stories and lied about her life? There's a document in Boxy that's called Movements of Elizabeth Short that helps a lot. It's not perfect. There are whole years where we don't know what she was doing. There's absolutely no way to verify what she was up to. We don't know. We absolutely do not know. But closer to her murder, we do know what she was up to. Yeah. I would say the last 6 months of her life are pretty well documented. But there are whole years in the 1940s where we don't know what the heck she was doing. We don't know. Is a theater in San Diego where Elizabeth Short hung out still there? I don't know. It was a theater for a long time. Then it was turned into the warehouse. It was a clothing store. And the last time I checked, it was vacant. It's in old. It's in that old part of San Diego. I can't remember the name of it right now. But it's in the old part of San Diego. Anyway, yeah, buses were tons cheaper than train. And in fact, and that's what's funny when they, when people say, "Oh, Elizabeth Short, took the train back from Santa Barbara to Medford." No, she took the bus. No. And in my opinion, that's why the gas lamp district, exactly right. That's where it is. Yeah. It is or was the Aztec Theater was in the gas lamp district. I don't know whether it's still there or not. People got around on the streetcars. It was a commitment of time. But yeah, the train travel was, a lot more elegant and a lot fancier in those days than buses. And in my opinion, I was going to say, this is most likely why she went to San Diego rather than the Bay Area. A ticket to San Diego was a heck of a lot cheaper than a bus ticket to San Diego, bus ticket to the Bay Area. And so that's my theory, is she had less money. Plus, her older sister and brother-in-law had no idea that she was, telling people she was going to come up there for the holiday. So yeah, bus travel was a lot cheaper. Okay. My mom was a court reporter in LA when this crime happened. She described long bus trips, but never the train. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely true. It was, Greyhound, leave the driving to us. And, it was, she did not board the bus to San Diego by mistake. It was deliberate. It was not, oh, well, I got on the bus to, the Bay Area and I fell asleep or what. No. It was she deliberately got a ticket one way to San Diego. And when she got there, she checked her luggage at the bus station and walked to the theater, and where they were showing various movies. The theater, there was a second run theater that changed the bill every night. And so there's some question about whether they were showing the Blue Dahlia the night she spent the night in the movie theater, or if it was the next night. I have this, it depends on when they change the reels. Did she take the red car around LA? Yeah. When she was in Long Beach, she met these guys and she wanted to go up to Hollywood to go to the Palladium. She wanted to go dancing at the Palladium. And so these two guys from Idaho, who were staying in the same hotel where she was in Long Beach, they rode the red car, got up to Hollywood, and that's where the pictures are, where she's in front of Grauman's Chinese Theater, okay, and in front of Earl Carroll's. That's all from that one little jaunt with these two buddies from Idaho. And so they went to the Palladium, and they came back. They took the red car, and in his statement, I think he said, we didn't get back until 2 or 3 in the morning, which was, not unusual. Okay. We're coming up on 11 o'clock. The time has gone fast. I hope it's been valuable. I will have more to say about William Mann's book next time. But again, I want to review it more thoroughly before I comment on it. I wanted to address specifically, does his suspect have any validity at all? No. I do expect a big publicity push by Simon and Schuster for this book that they're going to put out, and they're really going to push it. But his guy there's no way. And I'll leave it at that. Okay. 2 weeks, the 19th, I'll do George Hodel, Steve Hodel. And then the first Tuesday in September, I will do another Dalia session with more on William Mann and his book. Okay. See you next time.